G'day and welcome to another edition of Hef's Beer Reviews. Well, this is episode number 2 in this US beer mini-series, I guess we could call it. And have a look at these. Over here, we've got a 16 fluid ounce aluminium or aluminum bottle of US brewed Budweiser. And this one is a 330ml glass bottle of Budweiser brewed in Vietnam, of all places. Now, most of the Budweiser that we get in Australia these days is brewed in China. I haven't actually been able to get any of that for quite some time. I've been on the lookout, but I did find this one, brewed in Vietnam. This US Budweiser comes courtesy of Jez and Swillengrog. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's much appreciated. Quite a while back, Boydo did a comparison of Vietnamese brewed Budweiser with the Australian brewed Budweiser, which has since been replaced by the Chinese brewed stuff. And reasonably recently, Jez did a blind taste test of the US brewed versus the Chinese brewed. So I think it's going to be interesting. I haven't had any Budweiser in a long time, so I'm actually not quite sure what to expect. But as I said, it should be interesting. So we'll do the pour off camera as always, and then we'll come back for the taste test. See you in a minute. Okay, here we are. 2 glasses of Budweiser. One brewed in Vietnam, one brewed in the US. Let's have a look at the appearance. A little bit of condensation on the glasses, but apart from the head, I'd say almost identical. It's a straw-coloured beer. Once the condensation goes, I imagine that we're going to be very clear. Both just, this one here did have more head, but both just kind of a fine white ring at the moment. Aroma. There's a reasonable malt aroma in this one. Nothing in the way of hops. Yeah, just a sweet malt. What about this one? Different, not as malty. But it's also like, this one smells sweeter. This is a little bit lighter. Kind of leaning more towards kind of a cracker, I guess I would describe it as. All right, let's go in for the taste. Cheers. Not as carbonated as I thought it would be. It's quite sweet. Always, in my experience, and if you've watched this channel and seen any of these kinds of videos before, you would know that every time I've done a comparison between an imported beer and a locally brewed version, granted this is not locally brewed, it's brewed in Vietnam, as I said in the introduction, there's almost always been a considerable difference. Now, in my mind at least, things like water chemistry, water profile, the malt and the hops themselves, whether they're using locally produced versions or whether they're imported, there's the supply chain type of issues as well if you're doing it that way. I do wonder with this Vietnamese bud if they're using locally produced rice compared to the American one. Budweiser, of course, uses rice as an adjunct compared to most of the other US beers that use corn. And yeah, this to me has that rice lager flavour. All right, let's try this one. Cheers. bit lighter in body, a little bit cleaner. Not as sweet. It's got that rice lager flavour as well. It's the malt flavour is different, like in the aroma. It's a bit more of that kind of light cracker type flavour. A little bit drier in the finish, I think. Oh, no, maybe it's more similar than I thought in the finish, that is. Not much bitterness to speak of in either one. But yeah, there's a noticeable difference. I mean, I guess this one is a little bit lighter, a little bit cleaner. This one probably has a bit more, in general terms, flavour. In terms of which one I prefer, look, I'm pretty sure I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of rice lagers. I do prefer, in terms of US beers, generally speaking, again, beers that use corn as an adjunct as opposed to rice. It's not a beer that I've drunk a lot of. There's definitely a difference. I think I'd probably find this one more sessionable. They're both 5% ABV, if I neglected to say that in the intro. Yeah, definitely sweeter, and more flavour, I guess, but lighter, cleaner. Yeah. If I had to pick up, full disclosure, I think that my opinion here has probably been influenced by the comparison that Jez did, where in his experience, in the tasting that he did, he actually preferred the Chinese brewed Budweiser because it had more all-round flavour. So that leads me to believe that this one is probably the Vietnamese brewed version and this one is probably the US brewed version. And look, if I was going to have just one or two, maybe I'd take this one. And if I was going to settle in for a bit of a session, I might take this one. So yeah, I'm going to go with, did that come off? It's sitting here. I'm going to go with this one being Vietnamese and this one being the US version. So here, and it's actually underneath the blue tack, so no way of seeing. And there we go, V for Vietnam, which means that this one is obviously the US version. So there you go, US Bud versus Vietnamese Bud. There is a difference, not the same beer, Which one's better? Probably depends on personal preference in this case. I'm not going to definitively actually say that I prefer one over the other. Most of the time with these kinds of ones I do, but if that's what you've come for, apologies. I don't have an opinion on this one. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Hef's Beer Reviews. All right, yes, I am back. On reflection, after finishing the beers, I decided that I should give an opinion and give a score on both beers. I think I preferred the US brewed version. I preferred that cleaner flavour that came through in that particular beer. I'm wondering if the Vietnamese brewed version actually is more heavily influenced in terms of the flavour by the rice when compared to the US version. So maybe if you're a person that prefers that kind of beer with greater influence coming from the rice, then that might be more your thing. I went the other way. So in terms of a score, look, I'll give the US brewed Bud a 3 out of 5 and the Vietnamese version a 2.5 out of 5. I contemplated going 2.5 US and 2 for the Vietnamese, because I don't love, as I said, I didn't love either beer, but to me that just a 2 just felt a little bit harsh. So there we are, 3 out of 5 for US brewed Bud and 2.5 out of 5 for the Vietnamese version. Once again, thanks for watching. Catch you next time on Hef's Beer Reviews.